Hey people, it's me again. So, anyways, I'm gonna be switching gears here as far as that goes because I haven't really talked about this sort of thing at all as far as when it comes to um, my channel or even my other channels at that point there. But in a way, since I had talked about it earlier, when it came to like my VO3 creations in the last couple of months, as far as that goes. So, anyways, I mean, I think I don't really consider myself to be too much of a fan of wrestling, but maybe just a little bit into it, when it came to, anybody who grew up during the whole WWF's golden era, and that's like the era when Hulk Hogan was at his peak at the time, and it was kind of like the mid to late 80s, you know, and then of course when it came to like the whole WCW versus uh, WWF kind of rivalry at the time, and then of course when it came to like the different eras, I mean, I could say that the Attitude Era is like the best era when it came to WWF slash WWE at that point. Then, you know, but it was also the most controversial at that point because of the likes of Tipper Gore and wanted banded left and right. But that was just back at a time when there wasn't really a whole lot of options as far as entertainment wise, you know. But you know, but in a way, I mean, I was already like finishing up high school when the whole Attitude Era had begun, and in a way, I probably should have watched it back then, but it was like if I really did want to watch it, then I kind of wanted to watch it in, where I could have privacy at that point, you know, and mainly at that time, Dad, you know, didn't want me to have cable TV in my room because he was just at that time he just didn't understand that was just me having my me time and all that, you know, and that was like the thing there. And mainly it was just also the fact that when it came to certain things, I just probably wanted to watch it in peace without any unnecessary commentary on that. When I get to my dad and all that, or maybe one of my brothers, I don't even remember exactly, but still, that was like the thing there, you know. And so considering all of that, and then once I got in the TV set in my room again, I think it was just simply like, Dad didn't want to pay extra and all that because he was a bit of a cheapskate, back then. So I think I did maybe like heard like from Trevor back then because he was one of my friends back then when I was going into the adult transition program and back right at the end of high school, and when I was starting to go to the local college at that point there. So when it came to that, I haven't really paid all that much attention to what was going on there, and I think it wasn't until maybe, you know, probably almost like 10 years ago by, none other than Dark Side Phil's, playthrough of like WWE 2K17 and all of that. And then that was where I had to kind of like figure out like what are all the different wrestlers and all that, you know. And then of course it was also how mean worthy John Cena was back then, you know. But he's still kind of mean worthy and all that, you know. But in a way, I mean, I figure this is also like a time where I have to talk about his retirement, you know, next month, which all good things had to come to an end in that sense, you know, just as much as, you know, the Undertaker retiring or Kane retiring and all that, you know. And if I recall correctly, I think it was one of my brothers was a fan of the Undertaker, you know, back when it was like when he was first starting out in WWF, I think. But, and then of course like Stone Cold Steve Austin and all that, because it was also, you know, when it came to like the celebrity death match, you know, because he provided his own voice for that matter. And then I'm trying to remember what was the other ones that there, if I recall correctly, you know. But other than that, it was like not just I think not just that, but I think I had gone around and subscribed to Chris Danker, you know, also known as Chris Danger, you know, where he also had his WWE 2K playthroughs, and now he's in the WWE. Yeah, which is interesting on that in a sense. But and then of course, as I said earlier about like my character, what's his name? You know, Jake Shorty is supposed to be based on Logan Paul a little bit, you know, and Jake Paul, you know, but you know, more like a reformed kind of influencer rather than just being, you know, that. But it's kind of like what I said earlier about it, is that those type of influencers like that, you know, they can't really be the douchey influencer forever, because that they'll just end in disaster. So that was like one of the things there. And then of course it was like, you know, now it's like the whole feud between AEW and WWE, you know, it's another thing altogether, you know. And in some ways there is kind of a bit of a debate when it comes to like which is better as far as AEW or WWE, and then as far as like all the other things there. You know what I mean? But there's like still like, you know, TNA and all those other ones. There was another thing that I'm gonna have to mention here. But still, you know, it's interesting how that sort of thing there is. You know, I mean, I completely forgot about that sort of thing there, because I also did watch maybe like a couple of like the episodes of like Raw back then when I first started out. You know, if I can recall correctly, because I do remember one instance where it was like, you know, when they introduced IRS, you know, Erwin R. Schuster or Shyster, I can't even remember his name correctly, you know, but he was Bray Wyatt's dad and Bo Dallas's dad, you know. And it was just sad, you know, that it's been like, you know, 2 years since Bray Wyatt died, you know. But, you know, that was just another thing there. But still, not only that, it was just also the YouTube poops that were from like Snake Gaiden, or the Physio, you know, was another one. So, anyways, I guess that's probably it. So, talk to you guys later.